Hello everybody, my name is Shortline614 and welcome to episode 7 of Shortline Space Program. And in this episode we will be continuing building our relay network. However, we're not going to be building a relay network around Kerbal. We're going to be doing so around Minmus because currently inside that VAB over there a mission is being assembled called Minmus Express, and that is going to have a relay satellite, a bunch of relay satellites, a bunch of small landers, even a rover or two, all unmanned, to help kind of explore Minmus before we start sending Kerbals out there. And we need to do it in style, where we have constant communication instead of, every time you go around the far side you lose it. So, we're going to be launching 2 relay satellites. Of course, these are the same exact relay satellites that we launched back in episode 5, except they're going to be going around Minmus. One's going to be going into a polar orbit, the other in an equatorial orbit, both, 500 kilometers above the surface of Minmus. Of course, we're launching this on a Chesapeake 3.0, 3 cores, no boosters, and the main reason why is because this is the only rocket that I have that actually has enough Delta V to actually go out there and do this mission. In fact, I thought it had way more Delta V than I needed because that center core has solar panels and it has a probe core, because I thought, you'll see in a moment, I thought that I would still have that after I did my my trans-Minmus injection, my burn for Minmus, and I would just, use leftover fuel to redirect it into the surface of Minmus. That proved not to be the case, but I do end up crashing something into the surface of Minmus near the end of this episode. But as you can see, those 2 relay satellites are the same relay satellites as before. They have the second largest relay. They are powered by RTGs. They have docking ports, which turns out I didn't actually need those, spoiler. But they also have RCS for adjusting their orbits, just in case they ever need to. But this mission isn't actually going to Columbia Station. This is going to be going straight out to Minmus because my initial thought was, well, I'm taking these 2 relays, and I'm going to be taking a tug out there as well. But turns out I didn't actually end up using... I couldn't use the tug because it turns out when I went to build this thing, I didn't attach a docking port to it. So after this mission's over, I'll be experiencing a rather interesting death. But anyways, I get into a parking orbit, and then I start to try and plan out my burn for Minmus. And Minmus and the Mun are in the same... They're in the same spot where I couldn't get a Minmus encounter without flying by the Mun, which, I mean, that's good because, that actually saves Delta V. Delta V that I'd otherwise be using, trying to burn out towards Minmus. But if I just fly by the Mun, even if it's a high flyby, I'm actually saving Delta V, which means you're saving fuel, and even perhaps saving time. So I do end up getting this rather strange Minmus injection burn where I do have to fly over the Mun, but you can't see it right now, but I do end up getting an orbit where I'm coming in over the poles about 500 kilometers, which is perfect. That's exactly where we need to be around Minmus to deploy the first satellite. So, obviously, I point towards the maneuver node, this entire massive complex in space, this vehicle, which right now I think about it, it's not much bigger than any single truss segment on Columbia Station. It's certainly lighter. It may or may not be lighter, or may or may not be a bit longer as well. But I do begin our TMI, trans-Minmus injection. Like I know in this game the Mun is the moon is the Mun, and Minmus of course doesn't exist in real life. There's no equivalent to it. But what would it be? Minmer? Trans-Minmer injection? I don't know. But as you can see, that core stage was disconnected, and turns out it didn't have enough Delta V to crash that anywhere. So that's just going to orbit around Kerbal, and I ended up terminating the mission later on. But as you can see, I also overshot a little bit, so I actually needed to use the RCS to get into the proper orbit. But yeah, we're going to fly by the Mun as well, which is pretty nice. That was entirely unexpected and unplanned, but it was a nice one nonetheless. So I warp until I get into the Mun's sphere of influence, and I start looking for it, and it's below us. And I start taking pictures naturally, because taking pictures of this game is good and pretty. And there's Minmus. I try to select it, but for some reason it wouldn't let me, because I'm dumb. And then I just end up warping out towards the Minmus' sphere of influence. And it takes a while. Getting to the Mun, it only takes around like 5 hours in game, but getting to Minmus, it takes like something like, I think the average like 10 days, I think. 10 to 14 days. Well, we're actually coming in rather fast because we flew by the Mun, so we picked up velocity while flying by the Mun. So, getting to Minmus takes like, 14 days, 2 weeks. There's Minmus in all its glory, the giant Cocoa Puff in space, or ball of mint ice cream, or any of the other old jokes from like 2013. So we do end up getting into an orbit. It's a rather strange orbit. It's rather eccentric. The inclination isn't exactly where we need it to be. It needs to be at a 90-degree inclination over the poles. So naturally, I start using maneuver nodes in order to get that, because maneuver nodes are pretty useful things. But spoiler alert, I don't actually need to use that maneuver node to get what I wanted. But I'm just trying to get our first relay satellite, Relay 3, because it's our third relay satellite, into a polar orbit. I just want to get these relay satellites into rough orbits, and then once they disconnect, they'll use the RCS that they have themselves in order to actually, get into their final orbit. And then they'll, they're already doing their work right now, because, those relay satellites, there's no way to turn, I don't think there's a way to turn on and off the relays, they're just always on. And then I take some more pictures, and then, I begin the burn. Sticky keys. The cursed sticky keys. Yeah, that. So, yeah, we're kind of in this egg-shaped orbit, and then I didn't burn all the way. So, I just end up burning until until I see the inclination on the flight engineer, on Kerbal Engineer, and just say it's 90 or something. Yeah. Of course, a 90-degree inclined orbit is a polar orbit. Orbiting over the poles. And, I don't think I disconnect that satellite just yet. I don't think I disconnected just yet. I don't know what I'm doing here, just trying to get into that inclination close as 0 as possible. But I do end up warping around, Of course, being this high above Minmus, a body that doesn't necessarily have a lot of gravity, it tends to take a while to orbit. Like, just warping there, that short piece took an entire day. But we deploy Relay 3, and of course its mission isn't over. We still need to adjust the orbit of it itself. But we will come back and do that after we deploy Relay 4. Now, of course, Relay 4 is going into the same exact orbit that Relay 3 is going into, except it's around the equator. It's equatorial instead of polar. I actually considered putting this into a Molniya orbit at one point, or a Lightning orbit if you're not Russian, but I decided, that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Molniya orbits are really strange because they have really high apoapsises and really low periapsis, so they spend most of their time orbiting above the northern hemisphere, and then they swoop back, because the lower you are, the faster you need to go to stay in an orbit, so they spend like only a couple hours floating above the southern hemisphere. And it's mainly Russia who does that with their communication satellites, and I think spy satellites also do that as well. Because geostationary doesn't really work for a country like Russia, where it's in a high latitude. Really high latitude. But I do manage to get a maneuver node 50 meters a second. Of course, we have more than enough fuel. We probably have enough fuel to land this entire thing, come back up, and then adjust our inclination 8 times. But, of course, I want that. At this point, I was under the impression that upper stage still had a docking port, which it didn't, because I apparently forgot to add it. So I was thinking, well, after this is done, I'm going to put this into, like, a 100-kilometer orbit, and then, like, it will wait for the tugs to the station to come out. And then once the station is here, I'll dock the tug to the station. But of course, once we send Minmus Express up there in the next episode, we'll have another tug to play with up here. I think it's always nice. I think it's always good to have at least 2 tugs, I think, because one can fetch the other just in case, you know, it's stranded. They get stranded somewhere. But, I do, you know, begin this burn to, you know, get into a, just a standard equatorial orbit. And of course, we're this high up above Minmus, we don't need, it doesn't take a lot of Delta V to do it, because we're orbiting so slow. And I think I just used the RCS to adjust it. I could have done all of these burns with RCS, but, it's not particularly, I didn't want to do that. But, I do end up deploying Relay 4, and at this point, deploying Relay 4, this is the moment when I realize, shit, that doesn't have a docking port. What the fuck am I going to do with this now? And my idea was, well, I was thinking, well, maybe I could send this back to Kerbin, but I was like, screw this, let's crash this into Minmus. So I of course use our fuel to just get on a trajectory that will send us straight into the surface of Minmus. And of course, for the crash, I obviously had to slow it back down to real time. But this tug, unlike some of its brothers and sisters, they when assembling Columbia Station, they simply deorbited, burnt up in Kerbin. Others delivered satellites to weird orbits. This one crashes into the surface of Minmus, and of course this tug has gone farther than any of the other tugs before, so we do manage to crash into the surface of Minmus. Our engine does manage to cushion the crash, but in the process, the RCS and the power stage and the actual fuel tank itself do manage to come apart. We crashed on a rather interesting area. We're kind of on a slope, on a cliff overlooking the Minmus lowlands from the highlands, the great big Minmus lakes, I guess. Well, they're not lakes. They're not really made of water. What is Minmus made out of? I think the classic example that was given is it's made out of mint ice cream. If the mun is made out of cheese, Minmus is made out of mint ice cream. Now, of course, crashing stuff into the moon in real life, you have to be very careful about doing it, because you don't want to. You have to be very careful about doing it because you don't want to kick up a bunch of dust that could go in all sorts of weird trajectories. Of course, on Earth, you don't have to worry about that because there's an atmosphere which can slow stuff down and burn stuff up. But, of course, the moon does have an atmosphere, but it's so small that it doesn't really matter. And, there we go. We crash. The RCS tank explodes. And at this point, I was holding out hope that some remnant of this craft will survive for some Kerbal Explorer someday in the future to actually come out and, you know, see the wreckage. But no, all of it just ends up dying on the slope. Oh well. Crashing stuff is fun though. I don't do enough crashing of shit in this game. But anyways, that tug shall always be remembered as the one that crashed into Minmus, sacrificing itself for science and entertainment and other stuff like that. But anyways, there's Minmus, the giant ball of mint ice cream in space. Start to be getting very busy in the next few episodes, but of course, the episode isn't over yet. We still need to set those relay satellites in their proper orbit. So I switch back to, I think this is Relay 3. Yeah. And, of course, they all have RCS on them, so they can adjust their orbits, and I thrust limit them, so a bit more fine-tuning. You can't see the puffs of monopropellant coming out of those thrusters, but you can see that our orbit is indeed changing. And of course, I want to get this into a 500 by 500 kilometer orbit, which is a fairly nice. It's not too high, not too low. It's a good area because orbit because these two relay satellites, even if one can't see the other, these should be able to they'll be able to see each other I'd say about, like, most of the time. And even if they can't see each other, they can probably see some of the other relay satellites. So we're going to have, if not constant communication, like communication the vast, vast, vast majority of the time. Not enough where it wouldn't matter. But, we get Relay 3 into that orbit, and Relay 4 also needs to get into its orbit. Which, just using the same RCS to getting it into its orbit. Its final orbit where no other craft will ever visit again, but it will be appreciated by many for, many other craft for supplying constant communication between Kerbin and Minmus. But I take a bunch of pictures. And, I go back to the tracking station to see our beautiful yet mediocre relay network. I also forgot to rename the craft, so I end up going back and renaming, Relay 4. I did end up renaming Relay 3, though. But there's our fairly mediocre communications network, in all of its glory. But, thank y'all for watching. Thank y'all for watching. If you're on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and comment. Tell me what you think. If you're on BitChute, please like, subscribe, and comment. Tell me what you think. I live stream on YouTube and Twitch fairly often, so please stop by there if I'm doing it, and join the Discord server. Tell me how much I suck at this game and whatnot. And anyways, as I go ahead and apparently I left this in because I was dumb. Me deleting a bunch of debris. Half of this is from a Chesapeake 10 at F2. I'm really confused. Why did I leave this in? But anyways, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.